Saints fans and Houdat's from all over the world. This is Kyle T. Mosley with the Saints News Network. Welcome to the Bayou Blitz tonight. We're doing it raw. We're ready for the playoffs. And we're ready to give you guys our lowdowns on what's going to happen within the Saints-Eagles matchup on Sunday. I got my friend and cohort, Mr. Bob Rose, the host of Bayou Blitz, on the line. What's going on, Bob?
Not a lot at all. We're freezing up here in western Pennsylvania, but I know things are hot down in the Bayou, getting ready for that big-time divisional round playoff showdown and a rematch with the Philadelphia Eagles. I know everybody throughout New Orleans Saints, throughout the Houdat universe, is really excited to get on with the playoffs. This bye week seemed to take forever, but now we are ready to go, and I think this team's going to come out on fire as well.
Definitely, man. If you look at what the Saints are going to do, they have had, 2 weeks to prepare. The Philadelphia Eagle is riding the big momentum on their side with their Saint Nick that is guiding them to the pseudo-promised land they feel again this year. But what's in the way is our boys in the black and gold. So we are here to kind of give you guys a breakdown of what we think will possibly transpire. Remember, guys, don't forget you can go to Canal Street Chronicles and read everything about Bob Rose and all his previews of the Saints, as well as you can also check us out on the web at www.saintsnewsnetwork.com, as well as you can listen to our podcast at saintspodcast.com. All right, Bob. So what's the dealio, man? How do you think everything's going to transpire on Sunday with our boys in black and gold?
Well, gosh, and you mentioned my work through the Canal Street Chronicles, and I know a little bit later into the show, we're going to have the managing editor and my boss at the Canal Street Chronicles, John Hendrix, join us. I can't wait to get his take on the ball game as well. But as far as this game coming up, look, and I know you pay a lot of attention to Saints social media too. Fans are scared. Fans are really scared. And given what happened last year in the playoffs, it's just kind of in our nature, I think, to feel that way. That and obviously the Saints don't have a lengthy postseason history, but even with that brief history of playoff appearances, there are a number of heartbreak finishes or disappointing games. So I think it's in our nature to be scared. Having said that, you look at on paper, I love the way the New Orleans Saints match up against the Philadelphia Eagles. There's a reason that this game was 48-7 less than 2 months ago. Now, I don't think it's going to be 48-7 this time, but this is, for the most part, the same cast of characters. However, and you know the old saying, and you and I are both big boxing fans, you're talking about the defending champion, and they are still the champion until someone knocks them off. The Chicago Bears failed to knock them off. The Eagles went on one heck of a run just to get to the postseason, so they are riding a wave of momentum, as you alluded to a little bit ago. And there's not too many things bigger in sports than momentum, and the Eagles certainly have it. The Saints are probably going to have to deal with a buzzsaw early on because the Eagles are going to have to come out aggressive against that raucous Superdome crowd. And supposedly with revenge on their minds because Jason Peters and a couple other Eagles players spouted off a little bit earlier this week, feeling that the Saints ran the score up on them during their November 18th meeting. Now, Eagles coach Doug Peterson came out, I believe it was either today or yesterday, and said he didn't feel that way. But the Eagles are feeling a certain kind of way. Having said that, on the opposite end of the spectrum are the New Orleans Saints. 13-3, best record in the NFL, number one seed in the NFC. The playoffs have to come through New Orleans, obviously. Sean Payton has always gotten his teams up for postseason action, and I expect no different this time around. You're talking about a quarterback who will be 40 years old just a couple of days after this playoff game is played. He has had 2 weeks to rest, and I think that's huge. That's a factor nobody is talking about. But you talk about, and we had Joel on Dunbar on last week talking about how much, the extra week of rest during a bye, how important that is to players. I think it's really, really important on two levels for the Saints. Number one, all those injuries along the offensive line have hopefully had a chance to heal, and Breeze is going to come in with a live arm. And, those are two big things, especially to a passing game that struggled a little bit down the stretch of the season. How do you see it, Kyle?
Well, I can tell you this, man. You cannot predict everything that's going to go on, but I kind of look at what usually happens during the playoffs, and you look at what's happened in the college playoff system as well. You have a team who needed external motivation to kind of get them up and running, the Philadelphia Eagles. Carson Wentz, they brought in the young man. He had a great season last year up until his injury against the Rams, right? Mm-hmm. And then Nick Foles had to come in. But if you looked at Nick Foles early on through preseason, he wasn't that sharp at all, These guys just recently beat with Nick Foles at the helm after Wentz went down again with the fracture in his back. I think they beat with the Texans, and they beat a couple other guys that are playoff bound, teams, right? And the Rams was a big win that they did, and Nick Foles had a whale of a game. And you look at last week, Bob, I was watching that game against the Bears. If the Bears had enough offense that they could have generated against those guys, we would have been talking about a different outcome. And I know people will say woulda, coulda, shoulda, right? And that's a fair thing to say. But I just believe going against Drew Brees and the New Orleans Saints, it's going to be a different story when it comes to the type of offense that they're going to see. You're not going to see the same type of offense. You're not going to have an inconsistent offense like you had under Deshaun Watson when they barely squeaked out that win against those guys. And you're not going to have the inconsistency that you will have with a Mitchell Trubisky as well. Even though Trubisky played fairly decently, but there were some times that the Bears did not take advantage of personnel matchup that they should have. And one big disadvantage that was out there was Cone, I know Malcolm Jenkins as well as the other safety did a pretty good job blanketing him from time to time. But when we introduced Ted Ginn to the factor, and he's healthy Michael Thomas, and I really believe one of these two rookies, either Kirkwood or Smith, are going to really step up to the plate.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. As a matter of fact, I just did a piece earlier this week on X Factors, and I highlighted Traquan Smith and Ted Ginn as two guys that not only I expect to step up, but the Saints really need them to. And I could have easily replaced Traquan with Kirkwood. I'm like you. I really like both of these rookie receivers. What I don't like about them has been how inconsistent they've been this year. But Breeze and the coaching staff really likes the abilities of both of them and already has a certain amount of confidence in them. And having Ginn back into the lineup, the man has 12 games of playoff experience. People forget what a good playoff, 2-game playoff he had with the Saints last year. Had over 100 yards against Carolina and near 100 yards against the Minnesota Vikings. So Ginn can threaten the defense deep, even at this stage of his career. Since he's become a Saint, as we've seen with his return to the lineup against the Pittsburgh Steelers, he runs intermediate routes pretty sharply, something that was a criticism of many people, including myself, throughout his career. So Ginn adds that other element that can shift a defensive focus away from their two top weapons, Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara, in the passing game. Now, Kamara and Thomas are still going to be the focal point, but now you have a Ted Ginn Jr. to worry about, which means that you don't need Traquan Smith or Keith Kirkwood to be your number 2 guy. That could relieve a little bit of pressure on them, especially in a playoff type of intensity. So I just think all the way around, and like you pointed out, Ginn was not in the line. A lot of Philadelphia fans are saying, we didn't have this and we didn't have that the last time that our Eagles played your Saints. And okay, but the Saints, they didn't have Ginn. They didn't have. I don't believe they had Marcus Davenport back in the lineup on the defensive side, and they didn't have Teron Armstead at left tackle. All of those gentlemen looked to be ready to play. Armstead's still somewhat of a question mark, although he was back at practice today. So I think the Saints have the ability to take advantage of a lot of the mismatches that they'll be looking at in the Philadelphia secondary, because as you pointed out, Trubisky had one heck of a game, and so did Allen Robinson, their wide receiver. But the Bears' offensive game plan, for whatever reason, could not take advantage of, could not get Tarek Cohen into the open field, which is a trademark of theirs. None of their other receivers had a particularly special game. I think if the Eagles set up to play that type of defense again, the Saints could scorch them just like they did on November 18th.
Well, not only scorch them, I believe it could be a factor where the Saints can control the ball more effectively than what the Bears were able to do so. Both of the teams on last weekend in the wild card playoffs had their opportunities, and if it were not for the outstanding effort from the special teams to have that young man to get the tip of the ball and change the trajectory of that kick from the young man, we will be talking about the Saints playing the Dallas Cowboys right now.
Right.
But we're not, right? So, look, Bob, all week long, ever since Sunday night, national media has really been just loving the fact that Nick Foles is doing what he's doing. And, you got to give him a lot of credit. He managed the game well, and he bounced back, and he didn't get rattled after the 2 interceptions that he threw. But, with a better team, those guys, those type of advantages are going to be against them, because I believe the Bears were only able to muster, 3 points off of those turnovers. So, I don't believe he can be able to make those same type of mistakes against Sean Payton and Drew Brees.
No, I agree with you. Payton and Brees have the aggressive type of mentality. They're looking to score. They expect to score on every drive. They very rarely come into a game, especially in the dome, playing for field position or possessions. They're looking to score, and especially when they get a turnover, they're looking for the end zone for a splash play immediately. Chicago has a much different style, and I take no credit away, I give them all the credit in the world for a wonderful regular season. It took a lot of people by surprise, but they did so in a much different way than the New Orleans Saints did. They did so with a lot of ball control and not a lot of explosiveness at all on offense. And that came back to burn them in the playoffs. When Foles and the Philadelphia Eagle offense made the mistakes that they made, particularly early in the game, those are exactly the kind of errors that will get you blown out of a playoff game if you're playing a New Orleans Saints or a Los Angeles Rams, some team that will make you instantly pay for that mistake. A team like the Saints, you have, even at this stage of Brees' career, teams come into games against the Saints, especially in the Superdome, with the mentality of we have to match them possession for possession. We can't give away anything, and we can't make mistakes, especially on our side of the field. And if Philadelphia does that this time around, and they did November 18th too when they came into the Dome, things are going to get out of hand for them very quickly. As we know from talking to Joe Londonbar last week, the momentum of a playoff game can shift so rapidly and so drastically that things can get out of hand very, very quickly, especially when you're a road team. So Philadelphia already has the deck sort of stacked against them coming in.
Yeah, and you brought up a good point. But think about it. When you are playing in the playoffs, everything you do is your senses are heightened, your attention is heightened, your exuberance can be heightened, right? And the fear factor can be heightened as well, right? And I mean, I was trying to just kind of go over these last 4 games that Nick Foles played, and I didn't see any glaring issues in those games. Like, I did watch a little bit of that game against Houston because it was televised here in Houston, right? And I think with a better quarterback at the helm, they would have been in trouble there. I think that could have really ended their season right there. Mm-hmm. I forget who else they played was it Washington? They put a drubbing on Washington, right? And I forgot who they wrapped up the season with. But, I'm not trying to be a homer, but I'm just saying matchup to matchup, other than you thinking about some of the intangibles that are out there as far as the momentum that they're riding, and those players are feeling very confident, like Kyle Long and Bennett and Peters. Now, remember, Peters really had a difficult time against Cam Jordan. Yeah. And he also had a difficult time against Okafor in that game as well. They were allowed to put some pressure on Wentz. Now, the thing between Wentz and Foles kind of get the ball. He will get the ball out a lot sooner than Wentz would, So let's go back to what's our Achilles heel on defense, our defensive backfield. So that means Golden Tate, Aguilar, and Alshon Jeffrey are going to and Jordan Matthews whenever he's in the game. And think about Ertz, the matchup. He poses a particular problem. I believe Von Bell will possibly be on him majority of the time, right? Or then you may have DeMario Davis on him from time to time, because Foles doesn't pose a threat as far as with his legs all the time like you would have from a Dak Prescott or one of those guys who are pretty mobile. But still, they have some potential weapons out there that we have to really pay attention to. So how do you feel about our defensive backfield against their wide receivers?
That's the key matchup for the game as far as I'm concerned. I'm working on a piece that I don't know whether it'll be finished tomorrow morning or ready for Friday morning, but it's kind of highlighting the Saints matchups on the defensive side of the ball. And you're right, the big difference between Wentz and Nick Foles is that Wentz tends to hold on to the ball a little bit longer and wait for plays to develop down the field. Foles looks for really quick releases, gets the ball out of his hands quickly, and will not hesitate to dump the ball off or check down if his first read or two isn't there. As a result, Wentz has always taken a lot more hits and a lot more sacks than Foles will. So it's up to the Saints pass rushers to get to Foles quickly even if they don't get a sack, get to him quickly and make him rush the ball even faster than what he wants to get rid of it. And then is when you got to expect that Eli Apple and Marshawn Lattimore are going to play tight man coverage the majority of the time because that is sort of their MO and has been since the Saints got Apple in a trade with the Giants in October. This Saints defensive backfield actually played pretty well against the Eagles receiving corps. And you're right, you listed down the weapons. Ertz, second in the NFL behind only Michael Thomas in receptions, over 1,100 yards, which for a tight end is an outstanding mark. They have Alshon Jeffrey and Nelson Aguilar, two big physical receivers who are athletic enough to make the play down the field. And Golden Tate, who has been a thorn in the Saints side when he was with the Lions. But the Saints controlled those guys.
And Seattle, don't forget about that. And
yeah.
Seattle.
Yeah. But, I mean, New Orleans held Aguilar without a catch the first time that they played. Ertz had 2 receptions for 15 yards. Tate had 5 catches, but just for 48 yards. And Jeffrey had 4 catches for 33 yards. So the Saints defensive backfield did an outstanding job against them the first time. And you're right. I think that Von Bell will take some slot coverage responsibilities, be it against one of the Eagles slot receivers or perhaps Ertz if he lines up off of the line of scrimmage. You not only have to worry about Ertz, but the Eagles' rookie second-round pick, Dallas Goedert, too. He's an extremely athletic tight end and presents a threat as well. He had a couple big catches against the Bears last week. And something that New Orleans is well aware of. So the Saints defensive backfield, keeping in mind what you just said about Foles tends to get rid of the ball faster, they're going to have to cover tight. They cannot. Foles will eat you alive if you give his receivers cushion. Something that we saw in the playoff run last year that he had. Even in the Super Bowl, he ate the Patriots alive because the Patriots were not aggressive with his receivers. I don't see the Saints making that same kind of mistake. Now, that also highlights what New Orleans had been weakest in, particularly early in the year, is that their defensive backs were, when they did press, they were getting beat quickly. And no time for their pass rush to even get there. Now, we haven't seen a lot of that in recent weeks. We saw a little bit of some coverage breakdowns in the final 3 quarters of the Steeler game. But as talented as the Eagles receivers are, they aren't Juju Smith-Schuster or Antonio Brown. So I do like the matchup that the Saints secondary have against the Eagles receivers and tight ends, but they're going to have to win it. That's arguably the most important matchup of the football game.
Yeah. I know Jeffrey, the seasoned veteran he has lost a little bit of the step that he used to have years ago. Remember, he ate up Saints over 10 years ago, I believe it was, and when they played, was it Soldier Field or was it LSU Stadium? I can't recall. When he had over 200 yards receiving that day. Mm-hmm. But look, I mean, we're talking about 2 teams which, like you said, which defensive backfield will really make the mistake, right? I know, and I feel confident that Peterson is going to allow Foles to take some shots down the field against the Saints defensive backfield. Marcus Williams is going to be very critical in this game, guys. Mm-hmm. And Kurt Coleman, I know he has had one good play all season when he knocked the ball out. But, I mean, our safeties are going to have to just be just that, good safeties, and show up. Look, man, the Chargers used, 7 defensive backs against the Ravens. and they pretty much said to Mr. Heisman Trophy winner, you're going to have to, Mr. Jackson, you're going to have to come in and run the ball, but you're not going to throw it anywhere on us at all. And that's what they limited him for 3 3/4 quarters, right? I don't know if we had that type of personnel. You know, PJ, from time to time, he makes mistakes. He holds, grabs. Eli Apple holds, grabs. But with 2 weeks to prepare, usually a team like the Saints, and we've seen this, can either do one or two things. Either they're going to come out strong, make early statements, put the pressure on the Eagles, or they're going to start off slow, right?
Yeah.
Usually after the bye, the Saints don't start off slow. And I don't believe that Sean Payton is going to allow this team, as well as I think they've prepped them well enough to be more aggressive this game. You know? I just think this is one of those games, and like you say, when you come to boxing, you cannot be there waiting for the guy to hit you. You've got to be the first one to hit them, right? And you got to hit them often, and you've got to do some body blows. So that's where I love to bring in Kamara and Mark Ingram. They're going to have to be very critical, and that offensive line is going to have to give them opportunities where early the Eagles are going to have to start figuring out, do we stop them on the run or do we need to stop them on pass? And if we're able to be effective both ways, then they have an issue, right? Smallwood for those guys in the running game and Darren Sproles, I like our matchup with our backs a lot better. You know, Darren, he's not the same Darren Sproles of all, but he still could be a little bit dangerous on third downs when it comes to the check down. I think our rushing defense will be pretty good, Bob. But I'm just telling you, man, it's got to be. This is my thought. If the Eagles get the balls first, right, that Saints defense has to stop them from penetrating that 50-yard line. That's it. If it's not a 3 and out, they can't let them get past the 50 and stop them. That's what I believe they need to do, and play some field position football against these guys. Then we have to be the first to score, not 3 points, 7 points. Now, first time, but also the second time. We have to score at least 3 out of the first 4 possessions we have. The pressure has to be on them to try to come back into the game and make mistakes from there. That's how I feel about that first half. What are your thoughts?
No, I agree with you. Now, the one thing that would be a little concerning with that mindset is the New Orleans Saints defense, not just this year, but last year as well. They show a disturbing trend at giving up big drives or points on the opponent's first drive. We've seen it in nearly every game this season, including, I believe, against Philadelphia the first time around, where Philly, drove down the field and actually scored their only touchdown of the game within their first possession, maybe the second one. Now, coordinator Dennis Allen and those defensive leaders, they've done a great job of in-game adjustments. But again, as we've just mentioned a couple of minutes ago, things in the playoffs seem to happen so much faster that you don't want to. You want to be able to make those in-game adjustments. Those are of course vital, but you want your initial game plan to have some sort of effect too. Both on the offensive and defensive sides of the ball. where you can make a defensive stand or two early, and you can put a couple scores on the board offensively early on. So I do think, even if, say, for example, Philadelphia does get a good drive going, or it does put some points on the scoreboard in their first drive, I'll go, a little bit further than that. My first 3 drives for Philadelphia are what I'm going to be paying the most attention to, as far as the game momentum goes. Because if Philly does get a drive, as the Saints have had a penchant to do, giving up, if Philadelphia does sustain a drive, how do the Saints respond? Do the Saints shore themselves up and basically own the rest of the first quarter as they have the majority of the season? Now, flipping that over onto the Saints' offensive side of the ball, I think all of us expect Sean Payton to come out extremely aggressive. And that doesn't necessarily mean throwing the ball on every down, because we've seen them be very successful in a number of opening drives this year by relying on the running game and some play action, which tells you what? Tells you that the offensive line is taking control of the game early. And with those injuries that New Orleans has had on the offensive line, I'll be very interested to see if that's going to be their opening strategy. And if so, how Teron Armstead, Andrus Peat, Larry Warford, how they hold up. If they're going to, especially Armstead, if they are going to hold up physically. And if they do, I like their chances at taking the game over early in the trenches and allowing the Saints, even if they don't put points on the board in their first drive, to at least establish the game's identity. And that is, playing at the pace and the style that the New Orleans Saints want to play at. Playoff games are typically lower scoring than regular season games. Not always, of course, but the law of averages tell you that the game will likely be a little bit lower scoring than maybe what we have expected from two prolific offenses like Eagles and Saints. But for New Orleans to establish the game's identity within the first 2 or 3 drives on both sides of the ball are going to be extremely important. How physical can they be with the Eagle receivers, and can they hold up in coverage and get pressure on the quarterback? And then offensively, if the Saints offensive line can take control of the game early, which if they do, that tells you should be sitting back with a big smile, from ear to ear on your face if you're a Saints fan, if that happens, because that tells you that Michael Thomas, Kamara, Ingram, and some of those other X factors that we mentioned, again, Kirkwood, Traquan, that leaves them prime for big plays as the game goes along.
Right. You're right. You're correct on that. The tight ends, Watson, Hill, and I'm not sure if Arnold is going to be activated or not, but those guys are going to have to really do some damage as well. Now, look, the problem the tight ends have been having probably the last 4 or 5 games of the season has been once they get the catch, reeling it in, and holding on to the football. Josh Hill has done a little bit better job, but they're going to have to be key in this game to help out Drew Brees in some of those short yardage situations or on third down. And, Bob, we can go through every permutation we can account for, right? The bottom line is if you have 2 weeks to prepare, not to say you had 2 weeks to prepare for the Philadelphia Eagles, but if you had 2 weeks to prepare in the National Football League and you're the number 1 seed, you need to play your game. Yeah. This needs to be, I don't care who comes in, they're playing the way I want them to play. They're going to play my style today and forget everything else. I'm going to do what I need to do to be able to win that game, bottom line. And if they don't play that way, then you're going to have problems. So that's why I feel good, because I know Sean Payton's aggressive. So, and I think he has that mindset. We're going to play our type of game. A la when the Cardinals came into town, right? You know, Hightower did that first, was it 70 or 80-yard run? Bam. But you did not see Sean Payton stop being aggressive, you know? And if you look at most of the playoff games, other than that Vikings game, I think they were a little tentative, you know, when they played last season. But, you know, they played the Eagles aggressive when we won in the playoffs, right? You've got to play aggressive. You play your game at the end instead of you saying, well, I want to see how they're going to handle this and this and this. No. Let them see how they need to handle you. That's how you need to come and approach this game, especially at home, man.
Oh, there's no doubt. I mean, this team went 13-3 for a reason. And they shouldn't have to adjust to anybody. Like you said, they went 13-3 with a certain style of play and productivity on the offensive side of the ball, and a certain style of play and tenacity on the defensive side of the ball. There's no reason to believe that that's going to change anytime soon. They earned this spot, and you know, now is their opportunity to stand their ground and fight for it. And to help us break down a tale of the tape, we'd like to introduce our good friend and managing editor of Canal Street Chronicles, our friend, Mr. John Hendrix. How are you, John?
Hey, man, I'm doing great tonight. How about you guys?
Hey, what's going on, John?
Hey, man, how y'all been?
Good, doing well.
I'm cold. You guys have a little bit better weather down there, but glad to hear you're doing well.
It's getting a little cold down here. It might get into 30s tonight. That's what they say. So that's our cold down here. So.
Okay, well, I'll give you that. I think our high temperature today was 28, and I think it's significantly dropped since the sun went down. But you know what? It is what it is.
Yeah. Wow.
Say you would shut down if it was below 28 for a while here.
Well, I tell you what, 28 degrees at least means that it's January, which means that it's playoff time. You know, at least I have a reason to wake up in the mornings, you know, to enjoy NFL football at least until early February. So we have that going on, obviously.
Absolutely, yeah, and I tell you, you know, when the NFL concludes this year, I'm really excited to see what the AAF has to offer, because I think that's going to be pretty good.
Oh yeah, and John, I know you have a good feel for you know, for what's going on with the Saints. You're a little bit more directly connected to them than either Kyle or myself are. How's your feel for the team's mentality and the team's mood going into this weekend?
Well, I think it's good. You know, I think there's good energy. I know after that last regular season game, you know, Sean Payton had talked about how he just didn't feel from the get-go that, you know, that they really had, I guess their head and stuff was in it, and that's fair. I mean, you know, really what were they playing for type thing, except for some people trying to get some incentive. So, look, I think you look at this team down the stretch, they've had a little bit of this and that. We've seen the defense come to life. We've seen the offense struggle. We've seen the offense pick it back up. And then we kind of all got concerned about Kyle Allen, you know, dealing and doing all this stuff, which is fair, but I don't know if you saw the full extent of the Saints defense in that game. But look, you got the weekend off. You got a chance to clear your head. And Sean Payton, the way he talked about it, and, you know, I think as Zach Striefel kind of described what typically happens, getting those ticket sales out from all your people that are asking, referring them to somebody else, so that way you're totally focused. And then kind of the stunt he pulled on Monday about the cash and the Super Bowl trophy. I mean, that's what you need to do to get this team engaged, because everybody seems like they're siding with the Eagles. It's Nick Foles. He's magic. He's perfect. He's going to upset the Saints and all this other stuff. But, you know, let's not forget this team went 13-3 and beat some really good football clubs this regular season.
Yeah, no doubt. And yeah, you mentioned Foles, and yeah, he has played well down the stretch, and nobody can take away the playoff success and run the Super Bowl MVP that he had last year. But what in Foles' game makes him different from Carson Wentz, and how does that present a challenge to the Saints defense?
I mean, I think there's something obviously to being a veteran. I think, and I think we've had those talks that just this Eagles team, once Wentz went down, there's nothing wrong with Wentz. Wentz has done a fantastic job. He's been a great quarterback in the future, obviously. But something about the dynamic of the team when Foles stepped in just changed. And, whether they rallied around him or saw some of the different things that he was able to do, for whatever reason, the team's responding. And, finding their groove, winning all those games, getting into the postseason when the Vikings kind of took everything away and such. I mean, it's just something that you see happen to some teams. I remember Saints teams doing it in years past that kind of rally behind. So, you just so to speak, hitting their stride. And, he's just a different type of quarterback. And the Bears defense is as great as they were and how highly touted they were. They finished with 50 sacks in the league, tied for third most in the NFL. Saints are right behind him at 49. Khalil Mack was virtually a non-factor in that game, and they had, one sack. They were able to get 2 interceptions off of Foles. But this is the thing where whatever looks you give Foles, he's just, for whatever reason, maybe it's the maturation of him and such, that allows him to see the field differently. And I think that's a huge reason why they've been able to do a lot of things that they've done.
What are and Kyle, you and I were sort of breaking down the tail of the tape before John jumped on with us. I'd like to hear from both of you. What are your biggest worries or concerns for the Saints on either side of the ball going into this?
Well, I think for me it's the offensive line. I think that's my single most concern, because I know from the offensive perspective, I believe we have not seen the full extent of the Sean Payton playbook. And I feel like he's got so many wrinkles and different things that he's going to want to put into this game and just kind of throw out there that we just haven't seen all season, which is good. But, when you look at the injury reports from today, you see almost your entire offensive line besides Max Unger's on it. I wouldn't worry so much about Warford and Ramczyk. I'd be more worried about Teron Armstead. And then, if you don't have Armstead, I'm worried about Bushrod because he's on the report too. And if you don't have Armstead, you got to have Bushrod. And then Pete, he kind of got hurt on, I guess, a fluke, if you will, because he wasn't even really engaged in a block when he got hurt. And he pushed off on the defender, and that's when he hurt himself in the hand. So I don't know what the extent is there. That's something to look at. But all of a sudden, if you don't have him, you're going to have to either figure it out with Tim and Tom or Will Clapp. And for me, if I'm the Eagles, I've got Brandon Graham and Michael Bennett. I'm absolutely looking to overload the side. I'm looking to get to the breeze. And, I feel better about whoever goes up against Ramczyk. But that left side, that's going to be an issue if that line isn't even at least 80 to 90%.
Hey, John, when I was reading earlier today with Underhill and those guys, I thought he said the Saints had perfect attendance and all the guys were practicing.
It was perfect attendance, but they were all limited. So you had 6 of them that were limited, and all those guys were limited. So the thing is, limited, to do a couple drills, nothing crazy as far as it goes. It's not really like you're getting in full contact and all this other stuff. So, I mean, it's all going to depend on what you see on tomorrow's injury report. Maybe then that's where you start getting a little bit more concerned, and then ultimately the final report. But, you talk to the players, and Armstead seems pretty optimistic. He wants to gut it out, tough it out as long as he can go. He will go. But, overall, when you look at a report, it's different, I guess, from some of the old days, but being a limited participant this early, it could be rest. But, it's a good sign to see everybody in attendance. But at the same time, they're just not fully engaged in what the team normally does.
Right. Now, John, I told Bob my biggest fear is how these defensive backfield is going to respond. What are your thoughts about those guys?
Well, look, I'm with you because I think the front seven of the Saints is great. I really feel good about whatever combination they throw in. The defensive line, I feel they can get the pressure to Foles. I feel like they can contain the run. I feel like they have it what they need to on the front defensive line. On the linebackers, I know they've got the speed to match up with Darren Sproles. Mario Davis and Alex Anzalone can do that. They can also get Smallwood out in the flats. Klein, I know, has improved tremendously. And even when they go nickel with Mario Davis and Anzalone, I feel confident about the front seven. It is the back half that scares me a little bit, and just because, when you look at that, a prime example, the Steelers game. When they started that game, they had Lattimore and Apple playing sides, and then they started switching it over where, Lattimore was solely on Brown and such, and the other stuff. So, I think I heard Bob allude to it, but obviously, Alshon Jeffrey, Golden Tate, Nelson Aguilar are not Juju Smith-Schuster and Antonio Brown and all those guys. But at the same time, this all hinges on Foles and how much time he has and when he's able to see. So, I feel this is really – and we're not even talking about Zach Ertz. So they have a lot of offensive weapons in there. It's just going to depend on Foles and his reads and if he's going to be able to. And I'm telling you, it's going to be loud, and it might be a little bit difficulty for the offense and the defense too, because they're going to have to use hand signals to communicate. That might be a little bit of an issue, but overall, I'm wondering who's going to shadow, who's going to match up against who, and then what the safety help looks like over the top. I think Von Bell's a guy who we don't talk about enough, but he's absolutely had a really, really rebound season. He's one of the other defenders that just quietly have been playing good football. So, hopefully they have a good plan in place for that. Dennis Allen and the defensive back, so Aaron Glenn. But, that remains to be seen, but that's where I'm worried about.
Yeah. Let me ask you this question, man. We've been covering the Saints, guys, it's been 10 seasons for me now, and you have done an excellent job building up your repertoire in the Who Dat Nation. But these national guys, man, the national guys, every program you listen to, from Fox Sports to the NFL Network to ESPN, it's been how much Nick Foles and the Philadelphia Eagles can do this and how much they can do that and blah, 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 boom. Right?
Yep.
Why are they forgetting that Drew Brees is going to be there? Why are they forgetting that Sean Payton's going to be in that building as well? What's your thought?
Well, I can tell you the honest thought is they want to see the Cowboys and Eagles in the championship because of the ratings and all this other stuff. That's my gut reaction about that. But, I guess the underdog story, the defending Super Bowl champs, look, they're playing at this step part. They're just saying, I don't know how much stuff I have seen this week. It's almost ludicrous, just the fact that saying the Eagles team, this is a better team, this is the team that has a blah, 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 and they're building this narrative. And I remember last year, it was Tony Dungy, who was one of the guys who's criticizing the same, throwing his 2 cents into the pot, but saying, well, they beat the Panthers twice. Well, you can't really beat a team 3 times in a season. I mean, it's so much harder, and look how that turned out. So, look, I think it's just a lot of noise, and honestly, I think it's great for the Saints because they're getting a lot of bulletin board material, but at the same time, they're hyping the Eagles, and they got to feel good and say, look, we can do this. We can beat these guys. We can go into their building and pull off what everybody's saying is impossible. But, I try to filter out some of that stuff too because I've seen some really asinine takes out there recently, and I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the market. Nobody wants to see New Orleans do something again, but, they sure want to copycat them. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, and it's been pretty interesting. Maurice Jones-Drew, again, has hated against the Saints. The only guys that I really see that give some honest feedback from time to time is how Deion Sanders and LT as well as Shannon Sharp kind of give their portrayals when they're talking late night on Sundays. But other than that, man, everything's been slanted Philadelphia, Philadelphia, Philadelphia.
Yeah, I mean, and that's fair, but it's one thing to think that, but you're talking about a Saints team that, I mean, you wipe away that Panthers game in the last one, that really doesn't count, but they lost really two other times. They lost to the Patriots, and then they lost to the Bucks in the season opener. I mean, it is hard, absolutely very difficult for somebody to come into the Superdome and beat the Saints. Right now, they have got that strong at home. This team just feeds off the crowd. I think just everything falls in place at the Superdome. I mean, I've seen some wacky games over the past couple seasons, being there up in the press box and such. It's just you don't believe what's happening, and just the crowd has just done a fantastic job. And I know they've been challenged this week, and they'll stay challenged. But I guess all the makings. And I saw the Bears. I saw the Eagles beating the Bears. I just didn't believe in the Bears. I thought the Cowboys and Seahawks could have gone either way. I was thinking more Cowboys because they played at home, but they're not a good road team going out there. So, I was kind of expecting some of this to happen, and, I just, you look up and you see, 1 seed versus 6 seed, that's money, cash to the bank, but I don't think this team is taking it that way, and I feel that everybody else is trying to push it like the Saints are just overlooking them, and they're just thinking that they're just going to walk in and walk out there. That's not going to happen.
Guys, I do want to get right back to Saints Eagles, but I did want to get both of your thoughts on how the other NFC division game is going to go when Dallas visits the Los Angeles Rams. I know I've said a couple of times this week that I wouldn't be surprised to see Dallas knock off the Rams, mainly because every time the Rams have faced a physical opponent, and an opponent that's going to be more physical than them, I should say, they've lost or really struggled. We saw it when the Rams came to New Orleans. Having said that, I think the Rams have enough skill position players and the Cowboys are limited enough offensively that Los Angeles is going to make a couple of plays early and then hold on for dear life at the end. But I see the Rams escaping that one. How do you guys see that other divisional round game going?
Well, I mean, for me, I just feel like the Cowboys they're not a good road team. I mean, they're really not. I think they finished 500, and you saw them get shelled against the Giants a good bit, and the Giants moved the ball with ease. And look, for me, this is Wade Phillips. I mean, the guy's been around forever. This is the dude that you get paid the big bucks for and such. And, as many millions of dollars and millions upon millions as you shelled into that defense. If I'm Ndamukong Suh, I'm Aaron Donald, I'm all these guys. I know where Dallas wants to run to succeed. I know they want to give the ball to Ezekiel Elliott. With that defensive line and those talented linebackers, that entire defense, there is no reason they shouldn't be able to isolate Zeke. And for me, that's going to make Dak Prescott try to beat you through the air. And, I feel good about, the Rams cornerbacks matching up against Amari Cooper and such. But, look, I'm not saying it's going to be a blowout. But, I mean, I guess that's my whole thing is you were the off-season paper champions. You got all this money sunk into it. And this is a game where you got to show that that's actually worth it. Because if not, then everybody's going to really criticize you and throw you under the bus. But for me, could I see Dallas winning? Yes, I could. But at the same time, I think the Rams know kind of what's going on and all the other things that are being said behind the scenes and such and what they're talking about. And I think they're going to be ready to play.
Yeah, and I kind of agree with you. They have the potential to win. I just think the Rams are going to really come out on the top because if it becomes a close game at halftime, I just think the Rams have too much firepower for them. Now here's the critical thing. Amari Cooper against Talib has not really been in his favor his whole career. I think he has only caught the ball like 3 times against Talib and matched up with him twice a year when it was the Raiders and the Broncos. So, I mean, Talib knows how to play him very well. So it's the other wide receiver, Gallup. How well will he be able to perform against Marcus Peters is going to be key for the Cowboys, as well as Switzer, how he could be able to help them on critical third down situations as well. But look, man, both of those running backs are going to have to really show up and show out. In order for Dallas to win, Zeke has to have no less than probably 110, 120 yards on the ground.
Mm.
And Gurley, I really believe Gurley is going to really do well against those guys. But the telltale sign is how those linebackers play. You know, Van Der Esch as well as Smith have been phenomenal most of the year, right? And, you know, we see what that speed did against us and kind of neutralized some of the game plan that Sean Payton had. Will these guys be able to handle the type of speed that the Rams receiving core, as well as that tight end, what's his name, Everett, is able to put some pressure on those guys? So, I mean, it's every game is about matchup. Again, with 2 weeks to prepare, I just give the advantage to the Rams over the Cowboys.
John, Kyle and I ran down at least a couple of X factors or maybe under the radar players we kind of expect to step up in this one. What's your feel? Give us a couple of names that a lot of people aren't necessarily talking about that could be an X factor or an important factor in this game.
Well, I think there's a few players. So, I mean, you look at this first matchup, 3 players weren't in the game last time. It was Ted Ginn Jr., Marcus Davenport, and Teron Armstead. I think Ginn helps open up that offense so much. And, look, the Eagles' secondary is not particularly good. And, you know, I think they had the advantage in Chicago because Trey Burton didn't play. So that allowed Malcolm Jenkins to kind of isolate Tariq Cohen a little bit. And Cohen wasn't a factor. But now you've got so many weapons on that Saints team that, you know, you're going to be able to find some different looks and find some ways to kind of move the ball. So I'm interested to see how Ginn helps to stretch the field. I'm not saying he's going to be the stat guy, but, you know, it opens up a guy like Traquan Smith or Keith Kirkwood to really make an impact here for this game. And that's kind of where I'd look at. I'd look at those guys and say, look, you know, you've been challenged by Sean Payton. You've been asked to we need more from you. And this is the game where, you know, this is where you need to shine because you know they're going to double Mike Thomas. You know they're going to try to get Kamara out of the backfield. You know they're going to try to isolate the run when it's Mark Ingram. So, you know, those are 2 that I would think of off the bat. And then the tight end game. You know, Josh Hill just got rewarded with an extension. We saw playoff Josh Hill last year. That would be a guy that I would keep an eye out for too. And, you know, Taysom Hill is a guy. I think that, again, like I alluded to earlier, Sean hasn't opened up the playbook all the way. And I think there's a wrinkle in there with some Taysom Hill action that might throw the Eagles off a little bit. Defensively, I'm looking at Marcus Davenport, Demario Davis. I mean, he's not really unsung, but I just feel like he can make such a difference, you know, defensively for some of the looks. And, you know, another guy I'd look at is David Onyemata. I mean, Sheldon Rankins has done great on the interior, you know, alongside with Tyler Davison and Onyemata. But I think Onyemata is a player who's consistently shown some real good flashes, and you know, could be a guy who it's free because some of the other attention that's drawn, and that could in turn help him sack Nick Foles and bring him down and force some errant throws. So just a few off the top of my head.
John, do you think Ben Watson is going to have a pretty decent game, or Dan Arnold as well?
I really think that this team could because, you know, I think that's just the missing wrinkle, right? And it's going to depend if Arnold plays because now, you know, it goes back to Sean talking about having to dress 46 players when, you know, all that other stuff. That's a different topic for another day. But, you know, Arnold's kind of been out of it. They use Taysom Hill as a tight end for blocking and such. So, really your receiving threats have been Hill and Watson. You know, I think obviously we know Ben Watson's going to retire at the end of the season. I think the pastor has some gas left in the tank, but, I think him and Drew's got to be on the same page early, but it wouldn't surprise me to see him have a good, strong game. Nothing crazy like 100 yards or anything, but I really think, if you put somebody like Malcolm Jenkins who's trying to account for Kamara, you've got Avonte Maddox and another person trying to double up Mike Thomas, then you've got some other matchups with Smith and Ginn Jr., I think that absolutely is favorable for the tight ends because you get them on a linebacker, I know they're going to win that most all the time.
Yeah. How do you see the run game with Kamara and Ingram?
I feel strong about it. I feel confident. I think, Ingram is a guy, maybe Alabama losing was a really good thing because, I think Angry Mark is, or I call him Ingram, is primed for a really good showing. And, I just feel that for him, I don't want to say elephant in the room, but this is a guy who's going to be a free agent after this year. I know the Saints might try to bring him back. I mean, that's just kind of the respect they have for him and such. But, ultimately, I could see the run game opening up. I know the Eagles are going to try to stack the box. But, if I'm Philly and I'm trying to win this game, what I'm really trying to focus on is setting up some third and longs, 3rd and 7s, 3rd and 8s, 3rd and 9s, and above because, Saints don't typically do well in those 3rd and longer situations. And that's kind of attributed to, not having Ginn in the lineup. But if you can force them to have that, then it's going to work well for you. But, it all hinges on the run, and it goes back to that offensive line being the most important part of this Saints team right now.
Right. I would run at Bennett early and often, get him winded as much as you can.
Oh, I'm with you. I think that's a great idea.
And John, I've said the same thing that you just said about Ingram. This almost has the feel, this playoff of, I can see Ingram going on a 2 or 3 game tear where he just plays outstanding football. And we both know that he has been sort of underappreciated during his career as a Saint. But I mean, he can do it all. He is an every down back. But having said that, over the last month of the season, coming into the last month of the season, I should say, New Orleans essentially needed to win just one of their last 4 or 5 games to wrap up everything. So there's a lot to what you say about Sean, Coach Payton not really opening up his offensive playbook and keeping a few things under wraps. And I want to get both of your opinions, guys. Down the stretch, did Breeze look like he had a bit of a tired arm, or was just that a matter of a bit of a scaled back offensive game plan and a beat up offensive line?
For me, I think it's more of the offensive line. I think the Saints were able to serviceably get by without having Teron Armstead in the lineup. But, towards a couple of games, it was like, okay, well, you don't have Bushrod in there, and then Bushrod looked more got beat on a few things, and then you really had it when you saw Pete in the lineup and stuff. So I think that plays a factor just because it limits some of the options that they obviously want to do and run. But as for me, I don't think it's more about Breeze because look, we saw him in that Steelers game. I mean, he was just I don't want to say perfect, but he was really good. And the type of performance you just sit there and just enjoy just because of what he's able to do. So for me, I don't think there's anything to worry about with that. But at the same time, they really need to get him, I guess, going early because he's kind of had some of those lackluster games or those not so good performances, if you will, that are, real customary to seeing and kind of just, vintage Drew Brees. But I'm fine with what's been happening. I just feel like we'll see real Drew Brees. He's focused, that's for sure.
I needed to sound like the mainstream media when I asked that question. I kind of feel the same way that you do. But I think we're all in agreement that the passing game of New Orleans wasn't as productive down those last 4, outside of the Steeler game, wasn't as productive down the stretch. So I just wanted to get your thoughts.
Well, Bob, let me chime in right quick. Look, nobody was getting any separation down the field, man, and let's just be honest about this. So if you're not getting any separation down the field, you're not opening up the middle of the field where Drew Brees is more dangerous than anybody else because of his accuracy.
Kyle, you and I cry about that every week.
Exactly, man. But you saw the importance of Ted Ginn right then in that game when it was 3rd and 20, right? And he picked up 25 yards to be able to help the Saints win that game. So, tired arm, I don't know this season. I would say a couple seasons prior, tired arm, but he ain't throw the ball that much this year. You know? I just believe when he does take the shots, it's got to be more in front of the receivers than trying to be as accurate to the receiver, you know? And that's where Drew has really had some of his problems when he throws the deep ball the past 3 years. But with this being said, he has 3 weeks of rest. And a guy like Drew Brees, with all the preparation, all the tape, all the going through the motions, all the permutations of the games that he plays in his head and practices the games on the practice fields to himself and everything else, he's primed and ready, man. I don't know if we're going to see I'm pretty sure we're not going to see Drew take chances, but I know he's going to take his shots. And hopefully we could be able to see him take some shots early to Ginn, or let's say one of those 2 young wide receivers step it up and take a shot here or there for them. But if you take the shot, those wide receivers can't allow the defensive backs to out-physical them. That's my only concern also. These guys have to be physical the rest of the playoff stretch. If they're going to go and win that Lombardi in Atlanta, you've got to be totally physical.
Yeah, and you look, I just piggyback. One of the things I don't think gets talked about enough, especially with this national media and all this, I mean, let's not forget, this is a team in the playoffs last year. This is a team that rallied behind in a Vikings game where they were getting killed, essentially, in halftime. So it's not only that game, they had it against Washington. They had games where they rallied behind. They were the ones counted out and such. But, you know, that playoff experience is valuable, obviously, and the Eagles have it too. But, you know, I just feel you've got 2 games at home is what you're looking at, and you got to win the 3. But, you know, you got to feel great about that as a player, and the fact that, you know, even if it doesn't go your way to start, or if you get down early, you know this team isn't going to melt down like some teams on the sidelines and just go crazy. They've got the composure, they got the mentality to get things corrected and just kind of take it a drive at a time.
Yeah, and I mean, you guys are absolutely right. And you know, all 3 of us have pointed out many times. Not only did the Saints gain that valuable playoff experience last year, for what, outside of players like Brees and Ingram, for what is still a very young roster, they gained valuable postseason experience, and the way that they lost, no player wants to experience that ever. And I think that has this team and that had this coaching staff eyeing up one goal, and you know, in doing so, they knew what it took to prevent getting themselves in a situation like, for example, a big halftime deficit in a playoff game at Minnesota and things like that. They know what it takes to prevent that kind of thing. And like you point out, John, now the Eagles have to come into the Dome. If it's not the toughest place to play, it is certainly right up there. And this fan base is going to be riled up, and we know the numbers, guys. How much more productive the Saints offense is inside that Superdome compared to anywhere else, any other venue in the National Football League. Do you expect Sean Payton to come out winging, and this team to come out roaring and get Philadelphia on its heels right away?
I think that's what you want.
Yeah.
I think that's absolutely what you want to happen. I think you want to set the tone early. I don't know who they're going to march out of the tunnel and how they're going to set that tone early. I expect that. And look, they want to get the crowd in it because they're just ones that are going to give it to you for 60 minutes. It's not going to be it's not going our way, because even in the Panthers game, the regular season finale where people who, probably sold off their regular season tickets and stuff, and to others, I mean, they were still loud when the Saints are trying to get back into it. I mean, this is Teddy Bridgewater we're talking about, no disrespect to him, but it's kind of the situation. But I would absolutely fully expect them to try to set that tone as quickly as they can.
Yeah. Well, John, I know you were in the press box. I was out there amongst the common people, and what I saw was that the fans majority of them stayed to the fourth quarter, knowing the team was losing, still passionate about the team, having a great time. The thing that concerned me was not the fans, is how the defense played, right? And, mentally, they didn't really put their all in all into the game. And I know Sean Payton lit a fire into their behinds, and I know we're going to see a different effort coming Sunday. I expect the Saints will do what they did to the Rams, guys, and be very methodical, very serious about their approach and aggressive about their approach, and be able to play their game and not wait to see how the Eagles are going to play against them. Look, Nick Foles only came in. He did a great job. He beat the Rams. I give him that, okay? But he beat Washington, guys. He beat the Houston Texans. I'm sorry, Bob. I know you love the Texans. But, I mean, I told you Bill O'Brien is a basket case as a head coach.
Yeah, you did.
But the thing is, he did not beat a 13 and 2 team or 3 team, because really 13-2. That's how I look at it with Drew Brees at the helm. So I don't feel as tense as most of the fans do about this game. I am concerned, and I'm always concerned, because I want them to be able to play smart football, and I want them to create turnovers and give extra possessions to our offense, and us not to turn the ball over ourselves. That's what I'm concerned about. If we're able to play our type of football, we're going to win. There's no reason why this team should be visiting New Orleans. I just think the Bears did a poor job at execution. If our team is able to execute, we're going to win. And we had 2 weeks to do it, and shame on them if they do not execute the way they should execute.
Well, we're to that time of the show, gentlemen. Time to put our kids' college funds up and listen to your predictions.
Well, for me, I guess I'll start. I'm taking the Saints. That's just a given, and it's nothing to do with anything else other than the fact that this team has been so strong and played so well this year. I see this game kind of trading, a couple of drives. I don't think it'll be a crazy shootout or anything like that, but I see a couple of stalled out drives to begin with, maybe trading some field goals, a couple things, and then scoring kind of opens up in the second quarter. Might be close at halftime, but then that's where I see the Saints kind of pulling away, probably fourth quarter, but I'm taking the Saints 30-20, 30-17.
Good. I was listening to Bobby, Deuce, and Christian, and I believe they said the Saints are number one in scoring. And John, you could possibly correct me, in the second quarter and fourth quarter of this season. Is that correct?
That sounds right, yeah.
All right. So second quarter is going to be critical. The halftime adjustments have always been key for that defense more than offense, right? So I really think if this is going to be a close game, let's say the first two quarters, and our defense is performing, I would say, above average to excellent, then I have a better feeling that our offense is just going to start rolling into that third quarter and cap it off with some powerful running game to be able to eat some clock and be able to really seal the deal. So the Saints, I would give the Saints a 34-21 win in the Superdome.
Okay. Well, John, my and I feel a lot of the same way that both of you guys do. John, my score is almost identical to yours. I'm going to go with the Saints in the neighborhood of 31-17. I think that this offense is going to come out humming. You made some great points, Mr. Hendrix, about we know we're going to see some wrinkles and new chapters out of Coach Payton's offensive playbook. It wouldn't surprise me if the Eagles, in fact, I expect the Eagles to hang in there early. They're just too battle-tested not to. But the playoffs is a war of attrition, and I think the Saints have more horses. They have better depth, and they have better star power, not to mention the home field advantage, which is huge. I can see the Eagles hanging in there for about a quarter, maybe even the full first quarter. But after that, the Saints are just going to pull away. It wouldn't surprise me if the game were a little bit closer. But I had the same kind of feeling that you guys do. I think that this team is very focused on what they need to do, and this is just a step for them. But it's a step that they're not going to overlook. They're going to take care of business, and they're going to do so very decisively. So yeah, I'll go 31-17 New Orleans.
Yeah. And this is for Coach Rick Gailey. Special teams must be special. You guys have been doing a great job all season long with the special teams. Continue to do that and continue to be able to put some field position pressure on the Eagles.
Yep, and I think between Coach Rick and Tom Benson and some of those other guys, they're going to be sitting there watching, having a front row view of this game, so it'll be something good to see.
Right, and as the professor would have said, the Saints have the proclivity and propensity to be a trendy team. Let's trend in the right direction to be successful at what we're doing and to be able to make sure that we play our game instead of playing the Eagles game.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think all three of us had the Rams over the Cowboys too. So we have the same NFC championship. Do we have time for quick AFC predictions, guys?
I'm fine. Go, John. I don't know about your time.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, AFC is it's interesting. I really like the matchups. The Chiefs, I'm just not 100% sold on just because of their defense. I feel like Andrew Luck and them are just playing some fantastic football. Frank Reich has really turned that team around after starting 1-5. And look, I'm really on the hype train for them. I know it's Arrowhead. I know it's Pat Mahomes. But it's Andrew Luck, comeback player of the year. I'm taking them. And look, I know what the Patriots have been able to do this year and such, but I think the Chargers got something special going on. I'm taking them in the upset.
Wow. I kind of agree with you, man. Did you guys see Muhammad making a sack? Wow.
Yeah.
He looked like a different player playing for the Colts, man. And I was just like, wow, where did this come from? But
somebody must have told him it was preseason.
Yeah. Well, look, man, Colts have a difficult task against those guys. And, again, don't forget, the Colts only beat the Texans because the Texans beat themselves. I would love to say the Colts because I really believe Frank Reich and Andrew Luck are a very great tandem together. And I just have a feeling their luck is going to run out on this game, though. So I'm going to take the Chiefs and the Chargers in the AFC Championship. and my money is on the Chargers, to be honest with you. So, but Mahomes, if he has at least 2 interceptions in this game, then I could see it going the Colts' way, because that defense is playing very well, but they still have too much firepower, and I just believe the Colts let the Texans get back into the game, and could have been a different situation, because I watched that whole game. So I really believe that the Chiefs are going to come prepared, and Andy Reid, coming off the buys, has always produced solid performances with his teams from the Eagles days to the Chiefs.
Well, I'm going to go in the exact opposite direction. First of all, I'll tackle the Patriots-Chargers first. The Chargers are not going to come into New England to beat Tom Brady and the Patriots. The Patriots are not, barely even a shadow of the teams that we've seen over the last decade or so. But I don't think the Chargers have enough horses. They played as well as anybody down the stretch, including a couple of key road wins. And coming into Baltimore and winning is not easy. So, give them all the credit in the world. I can't see them beating New England. So I'm going to take the Patriots in a close one there. And then over with the Chiefs and the Colts, I got to point to playoff experience here at the quarterback position, and we saw it play itself out in the wild card round. Lamar Jackson, first playoff appearance, loss. Deshaun Watson, first playoff appearance, loss. Trubisky, first playoff appearance, loss. Now Russell Wilson has tons of playoff experience. And he lost to Dak Prescott, but Dak's had at least appeared in the playoffs before. And I think that that's key. Mahomes will be making his first playoff appearance, and he has the biggest strike against him that any of these quarterbacks in the playoff field left has, the biggest monkey on his back, and that is Andy Reid as his head coach. Andy Reid is a fine head coach during the regular season. He is terrific at building teams and solid offenses in particular. But throw him into a playoff situation, and especially during his tenure in Kansas City, and his team's fold. I think I agree with you, John. I like I'm not a big Andrew Luck fan, but I do like the balance that the Colts have. I think that they're a more balanced team than Kansas City, and I can actually see them coming into Arrowhead and defeating the Chiefs. So my AFC championship, and I cringe when I say this, but it's going to be Colts versus Patriots.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, you have a good point about Andy Reid. I think he's the only coach that has given up 18-plus points after leading by 18 going into the fourth quarter. But, look, man, it's a different track. Indianapolis is, they're used to that AstroTurf. This is a different feel. They're not going to be at home. I just think after what I saw in Houston and allowing the Texans to try to get back into that game, the Texans just shot themselves in the foot. That's the only reason why I'm going against that defense right now. That's the only reason.
So, John, tell us, who your favorite writer is at Canal Street Chronicles, and tell all of our fans how they can find you.
My hard-working, famous, awesome writer, Bob, who's doing other things, Big Easy Magazine. Definitely got to give you props for that. It's great, man. I'm glad to see it, and glad to see you doing really well on Saints News Network. It makes me happy, you know what I'm saying? Just kind of the journeys that we've had. But, for me, you can follow me on Twitter at John J. Hendrix. Obviously, I interact with fans, not agree with all my takes or my things that I throw out there, but hey, it's just how we're wired, right? And obviously in Canal Street Chronicles, and now I'm doing stuff with Forbes Sports, covering the Saints for that as their contributor. So really excited.
Congratulations.
Thanks, man. Appreciate
Congratulations, man. That's awesome, dude. And, just me being the elder guy here, and I just love to see what you guys are doing. You, Deuce, as well. You guys are doing a fantastic job.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Oh, and it's such an honor to be on with both of you guys really at the same time. I mean, both of you are considered good friends of mine. Both of you have been so instrumental and to me and supportive, and have given me shots that perhaps nobody else would have. So I'm eternally grateful to both of you for that, and thank you for everything that you've meant to me. Having you both here at the same time to tell you that you both mean a lot to me, and I appreciate you both.
Thanks, man. I was happy just to meet you at that football game. Sure, Redskins.
Yeah, and it won't be. We're gonna make it a yearly thing. At least until I can figure out a way to relocate us down there. So it won't be the first. It won't be the last time we hook up for sure.
Good deal.
Awesome. Well, John, thank you for being on with us, man.
Hey, no problem. Thank you guys for having me. Y'all have a good rest of the week, and hopefully you got a good victory to talk about next week.
Yeah, who that?
Sounds good. We'll talk to you soon. Who dat?
All right, guys. Take care.
All right, take care. All right, Bob. Well, we got a good one, as they would say, a good one coming our way on Sunday. We got some good playoff games around the whole NFL. I really feel good about the slate of 8 that will be presented to the national audience. I don't think there are going to be games that's going to disappoint them as well.
Yeah, no, I think the NFL got it right. Let's not give too much credit to officiating or anything like that. But you got to believe it's hard to make a case that these aren't the 8 best teams left in the NFL squaring off against each other. So I do think it's going to be an interesting weekend of football. It's going to have fans on the edge of their seat no matter what fan base that you're covering. And heck, it's NFL playoff time. I don't know about you, but even when my teams are the teams that I root for are eliminated, I continue to tune in and I continue to watch. It just ratchets up my heart rate a bit more when it's the New Orleans Saints on the field. But
yeah.
Unfortunately, I guess they are the 4th of the 4 games, so we have to wait till Sunday afternoon for the Saints to take the field. So just remember everybody. Yeah.
When I was in high school, man, my old band director, Lloyd Harris Jr., would always say he preferred us to go on second against our rivals, especially St. Aug. And the reason being, you get to see everybody else, and you coming up to clean up the mess. So, I really believe it's going to be great. It's a primetime game. Of course, Troy is calling and Joe Bucker are going to call the Cowboys game. So we have Charles Davis and forget who else will be with Charles in the booth to be able to call the Saints game. Look, again, Saints play their ball, take care of the ball, win the ball. That's how we're going to win. Just go and take care of the ball. You're going to have a confident team, and they're going to put early body blows on you. The Saints can't do what Alabama did. That's the one thing. Alabama allowed Clemson to dictate the game. Mm-hmm. That's why Alabama lost. They started trying to throw the ball like Clemson. No, you are running the ball. Why aren't you trying to run the ball now? That's the one thing most inexperienced coaches do. And you saw the inexperience of the offensive coordinator for Alabama at that time, because that was his first year with these guys. And I'm not saying that's the only reason why they lost, but they weren't playing the Alabama ball, Saints got to do the same thing. You got to play your ball. You can't allow the underdog to come in and punch you and beat you up, not at your house. It's not going to happen at my house, baby. I've got to be the one telling you what's going to go down in my house, and that's how you got to look at it. So Bob's going to be a good one. And I feel very confident that Drew Brees is going to perform exceedingly well on Sunday against the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, I do too, and I expect a very good and sharp performance from this entire Saints team. They have literally waited 1 year, almost to the day, by the time kickoff comes around, since the quote-unquote Minneapolis Miracle. It's time to. I realize every season is different. Heck, every game is different. But there's still some demons that can be exercised. And I don't think that they're in the locker room talking about that every day, but it's in the back of every single one of those players' minds that was on the field last January 14th. So I think that I think they're going to come out and try to pound the Eagles out early and go for that early round knockout. So I expect a very sharp, aggressive, well game planned Saints team.
Yeah, and one thing that we got to be okay. I'll say it like this, fans. My hope for that defensive backfield is that they play aggressive, not to give cushions, especially not to a guy like Golden Tate. Because if you saw that fourth down play where they scored the touchdown to go ahead against the Bears, I'm just thinking, man, you have a yard or more, you can put your hands on Golden Tate, and it's not pass interference. Yeah. And they did nothing. And, and our defensive backs have been guilty of not, redirecting a wide receiver from time to time. And I hope some of that gets corrected, man. You got to be aggressive against these guys. Malcolm, and I'm sure Malcolm Jenkins, he at safety and coaching up that defensive backfield, and those guys have a little more confidence too. They're going to try to come in and put some wood on our young wide receiving corps. So let's just see how things transpire. But, man, I got to run. It's been real. Tell everybody, Bob, how they can be able to follow you on Twitter, as well as Facebook, and as well as tell them about our Bayou Blitz group.
Well, first of all, we want to thank John Hendrix for joining us again. Yet another in a great line of guests that we've had all year long. And thank you, not only John, but everybody that is tuning into the show, everybody that has been on the show. But you can follow me on Facebook. I can be found Bob Rose, and on Twitter at BobbyR2613. As we mentioned earlier, my articles are through the Canal Street Chronicles, although I have been recently contributing a little bit over at the Big Easy magazine with our friend Barry Hurstis, who has really taken the reins over there. But I help out a little bit over there as well. But Canal Street Chronicles can be found on Facebook, Canal Street Chronicles, or Twitter at SaintCSC. And folks, as Kyle mentioned, we do have a Bayou Blitz Facebook group. We are just a couple members shy of 1,500. And many of you that are members of that group are extremely active and helpful and informative, to the rest of our audience every day. So we want to thank you and show, thank you for your support and your contributions to that group. And if you have anyone that is interested in our show, loves our show, or will love our show, please get them hooked up with our group. Kyle and I try to mainstream everything that we do, obviously on our own personal pages, but everything is mainstreamed through that group as well. And it gives you a voice too. We want your voice and opinions and analysis to be heard as well. And the Bayou Blitz Facebook group gives you exactly that kind of venue. So if you are a member, thank you so much and keep up the great work. If you aren't a member, well, what are you waiting for?
Yeah, definitely. Guys, and don't forget, you can always listen to all of our podcasts and everything that's going on around the Saints and the Who Dat Nation through our Facebook page, like you said, on Bayou Blitz, but also the Saints News Network has a great page on Facebook at Saints News. You can follow us on Twitter at Saints News, as well as on Instagram at Saints News as well. Congratulations to Brendan Boylan. Brendan was an intern with us at one time. Brendan also became a co-host with the professor years ago, and he also was a part of our Crescent City Connection for a couple of years, and now he is a featured writer for, I would hate to say, but it's not the Panthers, thank God. It's for the Hornets. So congratulations, Brendan. You've done a great job in communications, coming from being a graduate with Gardner-Webb. Also, don't forget, you can follow Barry Hursters and all his featured columns at saintsnewsnetwork.com. And just be engaged with Barry. He puts out some excellent content every 4 minutes out of a day. So he's cranking them out left and right. And also, like Bob said, you can follow him also on Big Easy magazine. All right, guys, this is Kyle T. Mosley with Mr. Bob Rose of the Bayou Blitz. Bob, man, let's have a great one, and let's have a party toward the Lombardi as the Saints face the Eagles, and let's make sure our team support them as they go in and vanquish the Eagles on Sunday. This is Kyle T. Mosley of Saints News Network. Who Dat Nation, take care, be safe, and have a great time. Who Dat, baby? Take care. Bye.